Well, hello. I just finished editing my conversation with Jackee Holder, and what I loved most is how we kept circling back to the beautiful wisdom of trees. A single encounter with the tree lifted her out of a deep funk and transformed the course of her life, inspiring her to root her work as a coach and workshop facilitator with the profound wisdom of trees. Now, in our conversation, you'll hear how trees have woven themselves throughout her story, amazing synchronicities of her childhood home, her ancestral lineage, and even her last name. It's quite remarkable, but I'll have to tell you, I didn't find it too surprising because so often I find that our place of calling, meaning, and purpose is already intertwined with the landscapes we inhabit, the names we carry, and the stories that quietly shape us. So listen in and let us know what comes up for you.
So welcome everybody. Today we have with us Jackee Holder, and let me tell you a little bit about Jackee. Jackee Holder is a coach, writer, facilitator, and interfaith minister with a passion for journaling, creativity, and the wisdom of the natural world. She's the co-founder of the School of Journaling and the author of several books exploring the intersection of self-expression and personal growth, and expounds upon the restorative benefits of nature, ecopsychology, ecogeography, and self-reflection. So welcome today, Jackee.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. What a lovely introduction and some big words there at the end. Just like nature and I just like trees.
That's
It's
what it all
great.
comes down to, doesn't it?
Comes down to it really, really does. And this is really about our lived experiences of being with nature and out in nature. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Oh, well, I'm excited to have you on, and I was really intrigued by this idea of working with ecopsychology, ecogeography in a way to help with self-reflection, because I feel like I kind of have done that for the past few decades, really digging into that. So what does you talked something about maps that you created to help with the journaling process. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
No, I can. I've never been asked about the map straight away. So this is really exciting.
Well, you
Yeah.
know what? I love maps. I have
Well,
something about maps since I was a child. So when you told me about them, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, first of all, I think this whole idea of our personal relationships and connections with nature is really rooted in maps because, maps originated from people walking on foot and finding places and, going beyond their own areas or where they lived into other areas. And I really like this idea of creating a writing map, which is based on a company. My friend Sean Levin, he runs a company called Writing Maps, and he creates all of these amazing writing maps and journal prompts around a whole series of different themes and topics for writers. And we got talking one day, and I said, Sean, I really want to create a writing map for trees, because my relationship with the trees, and I know we'll talk about this in a moment, is really based on walking, enjoying nature, connecting with the trees in the environment that I'm in, really noticing the trees, really being with the trees in a way that just felt very restorative. And lots of people do meditation. I get so much from taking a walk in my neighborhood and really noticing the nature around me. But this really originated, and this writing map did, from a tree that I got to know in a local park in South London where I used to live. I was in a place where I was very burnt out, and I was spending quite a lot of time, let's say several hours a day, on my sofa. And I knew that I needed to do something. And in that place of I was falling into a depression, I just heard this little voice inside my head, and it said, you know what, Jackie, I really want you to get up and I want you to run from your house to your local park. Just get to the gate, just have a little bit of exercise, get some fresh air. And I listened. I got up and I went and found my tracksuit, put it on, got up, and I started the run, which was uphill, you'd be pleased to know, from my home. Wasn't a great look. I just about made it to the park gate because obviously I hadn't been doing much exercise. I wasn't very fit. But once I got through the park gate, I then got a bit braver and I thought, I'm going to run down to the other gate, which is about like a 5-minute run or something like that. So I made it there. I thought, well, I'll run around the other part of the park, and I made it round there. And I'm sort of like going really slow. I'm making a lot of noise. People can hear me coming. So it's quite a spectacle. Anyway, I'm just going to go up to the last part of the park, and I'm feeling quite good about myself now. I was thinking, I might make it round the whole park. Anyway, I get to run alongside what was the park keeper's house, which is located inside of the park. And this little old lady comes out in, quite elderly, in a raincoat, with her little bag, obviously going to the shops. And she walks towards me. And as she gets closer to me, she goes, "Can't you run any faster?" And I'm like, "Can't you run any faster?" And then I was, I just became besides myself. I was like, I've got to make it up this hill. And so what I did was I put everything I had into making it up the hill, which was not an easy run. And eventually I got back to the gate that I entered the park, and I was like, whoa, I can't believe it. I've done this. I was in my late 30s, I think, when I did that first run. And I was so jubilant that I stood there and I looked around me, and there was all these beautiful trees. And there was this tree off in the distance on top of another hill. And I thought, I'm going to walk over there. So I walked over there, and I was standing in front of what I didn't know it was at the time, but it was an amazing oak tree. And it had a massive canopy. And I literally stood there almost as if I was in prayer. And what happened was that became my morning practice. Every morning I would come out, I'd leave home about 5:30, 5:45. I liked the quietness of the park, and I would run around the whole of the circumference of the park. And then I would make it up onto this hill. And then I would stand there in salutation to this tree and just be in stillness. And I found that it really recollaborated me. It really settled my nervous system. And I started journaling under the tree. I started meditating, my own form of meditating, practice of stillness, and listening inside of myself, because I was feeling out of alignment. And the depression, sometimes they say, if you look at the word depression, it actually means depressed. So I needed deep rest. And we often think it's a bad thing, but I think it's a way that we really connect to those deeper parts of ourselves. And I felt that tree became like my cathedral. It became my sanctuary. And that's the name that I eventually ended up giving to that tree, because of the feelings of how I felt when I was under that tree. That's why I named it Sanctuary. And it really inspired me to write in my journal. I don't know, there was something about being outside, breathing the air. There's all the research about what it means to stand close to trees, under trees, what this does for your physical health and well-being, your mental health and well-being. And so I just started to generate different prompts that I would write about, stimulated by the oak tree and by the nature around me. And then I started to take all of those prompts into retreats that I used to run for women. And I noticed that they would just get really energized. I'd say, I've got these nature prompts. They're really tree inspired prompts. Which can we do some? Let's do some of these in our journals. And they'd be like, oh, I've got a tree that I used to go to when I was young. So this very first one actually was inspired by a lot of those earlier journal prompts that I generated from my own relationship with trees, and then the work that I did with women. So if I just give you a quick example, there's one prompt that is entitled, and I like that they're illustrated. I wanted something that was small, that you was light, you could just tuck into a pocket or tuck into, you know, a bag that you were carrying. It wasn't heavy like a book. But I wanted it to be stimulating. I wanted it to encourage people to grab their pen and think, I'm just going to use one of these prompts and I'm just going to write to it and I'm going to see where it takes me. So this prompt it's from Carl Jung, and he said that when you're up against a wall, be still and put down roots like a tree until clarity comes from deeper sources to see over that wall. So that was a quote that I had written into. I've got boxes everywhere that are filled with index cards that have got tree and nature inspired prompts. So I took that prompt, and then I wrote after this, I said, write down a dilemma you're grappling with. Now stand firmly on the ground, take some deep breaths. Imagine breathing in the oxygen that's trees in exhale, and imagine your breath is extending to your roots through the soles of your feet, and then hold your hands out to the side. Inhale through your chest, exhale through the branches that are your arms and your hands, and then write down what possible solutions are there to your dilemma. Just write like a tree, slowly, deeply, and openly. And the idea is that whether you're inside or outside, you can just imagine a tree. You could just go grab a picture of a tree and embody being a tree, open the body up like trees do. Imagine that you can feel your roots, imagine your arms as the branches. And from that place, I feel like we open, we expand, and there is so much more available to us. And the idea is that then you grab your notebook, or you might want to write on your phone, or you might want to do a voice note, and you write down what possible solutions there might be to your dilemma. So I really just wanted to encourage people to really know that they can be out in nature, and nature is such an amazing teacher, so many rich with metaphors that are so translated into life. You know, I think it's a great teacher, and it is a great space that we can gather so many prompts to take into exploring in our journals.
Oh, yeah. I love that quote by Jung. And I'm just curious, with that tree that you shared that kind of called to you in that park that morning or that afternoon, do you feel that that tree actually invited you in? Was there this consciousness that you were experiencing there?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. There are so many other trees in that park. It's a really stunning park. It's got quite a lot of mature trees. So actually just about 200 feet away from Sanctuary is the oldest tree in the park. You know, I feel like they could be sisters.
Oh, yeah.
But that tree, I can I can wake up in the morning and I can still visualize Sanctuary. I can bring her into my mind and in my imagination, and I will imagine myself literally standing under that tree. So I feel like that tree called me because it was from my connection to that tree that I read my very first tree book, Tree Wisdom, by Jackee Patterson, because I became so interested in the trees around me that I feel like I had seen them, but I hadn't really seen them. And so I went to the bookshop, and I got this book, and I couldn't put it down. It really is one of the best books about trees. It says it's a definitive guidebook to the myth, folklore, and healing powers of trees. And she writes around all the myths and the legends that are associated with different trees. So it's got like beech, rowan, elm, oak, and it's got all the mythology, more European than it is across other indigenous cultures. Like, like I think about in African mythology and rituals, ceremonies, trees are so symbolic and so referenced in so much of our culture. But nonetheless, it was such a great read. And so from there, I literally went on this journey of discovering the trees in inner cities. I am not somebody who will necessarily go out to the woods and the forests and walk by myself, but I will go into every park, in every crevice, green spaces in the city. I feel very confident about walking into our green spaces. And I have I guess I do have a mission which was guided by my own need, which is to remind people that there is nature everywhere. And you do not need to necessarily wait until you're hiking or you're in the wilderness or you're in a forest or you're in the woods to really embrace nature and to really benefit from the trees. But I just want to remind people that sometimes every day you are walking past a significant, memorable tree that has encoded in it stories and narratives and medicine. And that's what I realized. I was starving myself of connection to the earth and connection to nature. So when I was feeling out of alignment, when I was feeling burnt out, it was because I was parched. I wasn't feeding myself. I wasn't nourishing myself enough with getting outside, with walking. And I'm so thankful that I listened to that little voice inside and I started running, because it literally, I came back home to myself. And I felt like I was able to plant myself, root myself back into my life and begin a new chapter. My life was
Yes.
calling for that. So I feel like the trees have become my companions. And I have I call Sanctuary, the oak tree, my mentor tree, because I feel like that tree mentored me in its silence, in its wisdom. There would be days where I would cry under that tree and I would feel as if I was being held in the arms of a wise counselor or therapist or guide or healer. I would literally feel that. And I would be able to access my own inner resource of wisdom and know what I needed. But I felt that that was a safe place for me to do that release work. I think it was Alice Walker. She said, she doesn't have to go into a temple or a cathedral. She goes into the forest and she goes into the woods. Those are her temples. Those are her cathedrals. And I am never, not, it doesn't matter what I'm experiencing. If I have a week and it's really full of coaching clients, I'm delivering on programs and courses, a walk always resets me. It doesn't matter how I start out. I can start out clunky, I can start out with a low energy, but by the end of it, I do feel different.
Yeah.
If I then bring a tree in, touch a tree, hug a tree, stand by a tree, put my back against a tree, sit under the tree, that that gets elevated. So I know from my lived experience that there is something medicinal, which is why we have the idea of green prescriptions here in the UK, where doctors were advocating, they were prescribing. We have what we call social prescribing. And I created what we call a green prescription that was generated from the social prescribing. In other words, how do you get your nature fix?
Yeah.
I know for me, it's through the trees.
Yeah. I think that has started probably in a very fits and starts way here in the US. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in that area. I think a lot of healthcare professionals really need to understand the importance of this because, like you said, you were starving yourself from nature. And I think that is the biggest ailment or the biggest issue we have in our modern world. We don't even realize that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it is creating such a big hole in our soul or in a disconnection with self and causing all sorts of problems out in the outer world.
It really is. It really is. And, I think that COVID really added to that because we ended up spending more time indoors. And now that people are working from home, I know that has been more convenient for a lot of people, but it means we are spending much less time outdoors. And in fact, what the research is showing now is that when we went through the pandemic, people appreciated nature, obviously, because when we got to get outside, we appreciated it. And after the pandemic, our numbers rose in terms of people accessing getting outside and the outdoors. But do you know that the numbers have gone down?
Right.
They've decreased. And that is a worry and a concern. And I know that it is challenging because right outside in my garden, I have a massive weeping willow tree. It is like a temple. And yet, Maureen, there are days when I don't even go and say hello to the weeping willow tree. So I know, as somebody who appreciates what nature can and has done for you, I know that it takes work to step outside there, and I think that's a real challenge for modern life when there is so much around us that is, the culture of so much is on demand. We've been given the answers. You can just go to AI, you can go to Siri and ask anything. And sometimes that I think it's deadening us. I think it's creating a numbness to the fact that nature, oh my gosh, I feel like it's like what keeps us alive. And I have to, I'm being really, really honest here. I've been really, really busy lately. And, I have to remind myself, Jackee, when was the last time you walked this week? I have to remind myself. And so part of creating the resources is I want people to have access to resources that kind of stimulate them and inspire them and reminds them, even just holding this, I like the feel of it. And then when we're out in nature, to have something that doesn't require us going to our phones. It's still on paper. It still requires a pen if you have one, or you can, I'm quietly championing people if they feel like, writing on their notes on their phone, they can do that. But, allow being out in nature to be medicine, to be a prescription, and then take it a bit further with some journaling, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Doesn't have to be long.
Yeah. And something else you said about being out in nature, it's our cathedral are the trees. Nature was our place of connection to the divine, be it up on a mountaintop or being within an embrace of an ancient forest.
Yeah.
And that is where, yes, these buildings can definitely help us get into a place of deeper connection with who we are and the divine. But these places were the original.
Yeah. They really were. I have a beautiful book. There's some photographs in this book of where in a particular region in Africa, I can't remember which country it was in, but they have these forests which they see as their temples. And when one of my sisters had our ancestry done, and my people go back to Togo and Benin, which was part of the Nigeria, and they were the keepers of the forest, I discovered, which is so uncanny, but maybe it isn't. And it's interesting that you've gone on to this idea of, and it's not an idea actually, it's a lived experiences where the trees were the temples and the cathedrals, because they were the original temples. They were the original cathedrals. And certainly for my people who were enslaved from Africa, many ended up in the Caribbean. We had places during our enslavement where we went into the forests and the woods, and we had what we call the hush harbors. The hush harbors where we communed, where we sang hymns, where we sang our songs from our homeland, where we worshipped, where we honored and thanked the earth. So I hold this really rich heritage of knowing that the trees were where our people sought sanctuary, where they found their solace, where they found a sacred space. And obviously there is also not great memories of trees because of what were done to our people, my people, with trees. But I'm trying to really harness the positive, affirming memories that we have about being connected to the land, connected to the earth, and the rich culture that we have. And so when you mentioned, when I heard you just mention the word ancestor, I thought this is so in an alignment. So I have another tree in Barbados, which is a 1,000-year-old Baobab tree. My mum and my dad come from the island of Barbados. That's where my family originate from, on the Caribbean side. The Baobab is a very massive, magnificent tree that you will find in lots of different countries on the African continent. You can also find Baobab trees in Australia. And what I came to discover, which of course it makes sense, there are also Baobab trees in the Caribbean. Migration, enslavement, the slave trade, of course, just like people have traveled, seeds travel.
Right.
So I always believed that I would go to Africa to see the great baobabs. And it was in the early days of the internet, I was researching around trees on the internet. And one day, by pure accident, I discovered that there were baobab trees in the island of Barbados. I've been visiting since I was 7 years old. There is 2 ancient baobab trees. And so what I started to do, I go every year to Barbados to visit my mum, who still lives there. And I make a pilgrimage to the 1,000-year-old baobab tree. And it is a magnificent specimen. And honestly, Maureen, if I describe this tree, it's over 1,000 years old, and there is a massive plaque that tells you about the story of it. There are lots of different versions of how the seed got to root and be on the island. I like to think that, well, depending on its age, maybe one of my ancestors may have carried that seed with them. It's an amazing feat that tree is there. So I always feel very humbled when I am in front of that tree. The baobab tree is one of those trees that it's got like 100 usages from its bark, from its leaves, from its flowers, medicinal purposes. But I take this pilgrimage to the tree in honor to the fact that this tree has survived. And it makes me think about the resilience and the strength of this tree. And you know that tree, I can go there. It doesn't matter when I go there and visit that tree. Do you know there's hardly another single person in sight? It's almost like that tree is there. It's an old tree, so you don't want too many people visiting it because it will start to impact on its roots. It's almost like I feel like that tree is protected. Like it is like there's a light around it that says only go this far, and only certain people who are really interested in this tree will go up to it, be close to it, touch it, be with it. And I just feel very honored that I feel like I'm the guardian of that tree. I really feel like I'm the guardian of that tree. And there are so many times when I visit that tree, and sometimes the baobab flowers, it has the most amazing massive white flower. It's like a triffid that it blooms only for 24 hours. Wow. And I will land on the island. I'll decide I'm going to go to see the baobab tree on a Wednesday, and I will go on a Wednesday and it will have bloomed and I will see the flowers.
Wow. What a gift.
I know. And I just, and that again, I feel like I have had to adopt that tree. The baobab has adopted me, actually. Let me put it the other way around.
Just going to ask you about your childhood as it relates to nature connection.
Well, that's a really good question because, well, first of all, behind my home in South London, there was a little gap in the back garden where we could squeeze through, and there was a courtyard that belonged to a printing press. But behind the printing press, the wall had fallen down, and there was just acres of land that belonged to what was once a Jewish orphanage for children after the Second World War. We just had free range of this little coppice and just rolling hills and just grass. So in the summer holidays, I would just spend my time with my satchel, my notebook, my books to read. I was an avid reader. And I would just wander all day long by myself. And my daughter will say to me now, where are you wandering to, Mum? Where are you off to today? Because she is so used to me going on my walks. And so that sense of a real peace and solace that I used to get from being out in nature. But just talking about the Great North Wood, it's really interesting because I went to a school called Norwood Park. So that was an abbreviation of the Great North Wood. And my school was on a road or street that was named Elder Road. Yeah, so let me just plant that seed for a moment. And let's fast forward some 30 years from childhood. I'm sitting in a local green space in an area called Brixton in South London. It's a Friday afternoon. It's boiling hot in London. We go mad in the UK when we get a heat wave. I'm sitting under this very little tree with my friend. We're having a picnic. We're talking. And I remember when I walked up to the tree, I was thinking, this is a really interesting tree. It was quite gnarled and curly, but it wasn't large. Do you know what I mean? It was enough to kind of just give us shade. And so when we had finished our picnic, when I got up, I literally just looked down on the ground, and there was a little plaque in the ground with an inscription on it. And it said, this is an elder tree. And in Middle Ages, it was rumored that witches turned into elder trees to escape persecution. I love a little bit of mystery. So I grabbed my pen and I copied down the inscription, and it sat on my desk. And that's when it coincided around the same time that I started running, became interested in trees, started reading up more about trees. So over the years, I discovered more about elder trees. So elder trees they're not always trees, they're sometimes shrubs, and they're everywhere. And that's where you get the elderberries from, and that's where you get elder wine from. And they say that if you want to protect your house, build an elder tree outside or behind or to the side of it. The wood of elder trees is used in ceremonies and rituals in the Celtic tradition. There's quite a lot of sacredness and mythology that's connected to the elder tree. So I just started to discover all of that. Well, around the same time as going through all of this discovery about the elder tree, I wanted to change my name. I wanted to rename myself and give myself a name that was more reflective of the woman that I had grown into rather than my birth name. And I also wanted to have a name that was more associated with my African ancestry. But in reclaiming a name or being given a new name or, coming to a new name, it's a journey and it's a process. And I was also working with a spiritual teacher at the time who one day said to me, "Your name Holder is really full of the energy that you hold onto things." So, she was almost implying, I think you should let go of that surname. And I remember feeling quite like torn by that. I was like, actually, Holder is the name of it's in my family lineage. It was probably, handed to us from a plantation owner, a slave owner, but it was there nonetheless. It was there in my lineage. So anyway, I went on my journey. I continued on my journey, still seeking and discovering. And it was, I think it was 1998. I was writing my first book, Soul Purpose. And I used to go to this local library and sit in the same place. And on this particular day when I went there, my seat had gone. So I sat somewhere else. So in between writing, decided to take a break. And I just got a little bit distracted. I turned around. There were books on the shelf behind me. And there was this big, thick volume of a book. And I thought, oh, let me have a look and see what that is about. And it said, this is a book of names. I was like, oh, I should look up the name Jackee and see what the name Jackee means, or Jacqueline means. That's my actual birth name. And when I opened it, I realized really quickly that actually it was a book of surnames. And so I thought, oh, I almost closed the book back because I thought, well, the name Holder, that's not going to be in there, is it? Anyway, scrolling down the H's, running my finger down the page, come to the name Holden, think, oh, Holden's in there. And right underneath was the name Holder. I was like, quite surprised. Wow, it's in there. And then when I read it, I was blown away. It simply said, next to the name Elder were the words, the name Holder was given to people who lived next to elder trees.
Wow.
And that was it.
Love that. I love that.
And
Wow.
that story from start to finish, from me going to school, primary school on Elder Road, which again took me years to make the connection,
Right.
to discovering that inscription in that book took years in between each discovery. And a friend said to me, your stories and your writing about trees are like trees. They take time to grow. I couldn't make that up, could I?
No. And I totally agree. I mean, these connections or synchronicities that we uncover at different points in our life, if we look back and, we see how they build one
Yeah.
upon the other, and help us really, I feel, help us get into our deep soul,
Yeah.
authenticity, and our reminders of who we truly are and what we're doing here, what we need to do here.
I feel like it's also really demonstrating how much we need to return to nature, to ancient trees, to reconnecting with the deep wisdom that is encoded in nature and the trees around us. And, I was so inspired by um, the work that I get to do with leaders and really supporting them around their well-being, that I bring in nature and tree inspired prompts all the time. And that led to me creating a deck of 49 nature inspired journal prompts. I'm just going to show you the little box with the cards in there, which I use with my coaching clients. Got 49 tree and nature inspired prompts. And the reason I just grabbed it, because it doesn't matter what leader I'm working with, what discipline they're from, what profession they're from. There are two questions in this deck that always just spark so much energy in people. And I thought I'd share them with you.
Oh, yeah.
The first one comes from the wisdom part of the deck. I'll often use this prompt when a leader's come in with something really complex and they're stuck. They don't know what to do next. And I'll say to them, I'll invite them. Do you want to do a bit of journaling in the session? Yeah, we'll try something different. Can I invite you to write using pen and paper rather than just talking it to me? I want you to go to pen and paper first, because one of the things I know that I can see viscerally happens is when leaders turn to their pen and papers, they slow down and they access a different channel. Yeah, it's like a different bandwidth opens up. And then I say, here's a prompt that I'd like you to write to. You can write to this for 3 minutes. You can write to this for 5 minutes. And so the prompt is, what advice would a wise ancient tree have to give you about your current challenge? I cannot tell you where people go to with this prompt. They'll be writing and their head will be down and they're writing away. And then they'll come up and they'll go like this. And then I just say to them, okay, what did you discover? And that will be it. They will have resolved the issue. They will have decided that there's a different track they need to go to. They'll have decided that, do you know what? I'm not the one that needs to be doing something about this. But they will come up with an insight or a solution with so much ease, so much grace.
I think that prompt, it lifts them out of the moment. It lifts them out of the experience and gives them access to a higher position, right, on the eagle's perch.
I love that. You've gone to eagle. See, I normally go to owl. And I say, it's almost like you become an owl and you get a 360 view. Well, even better, becoming an eagle, because we know that eagle can spot that one thing on the ground. It can spot that rabbit or that hare that it wants to go and hunt. And I feel like it's like our third eye opens up. The third eye opens up in the writer, just taking that space. And I feel like it's like the writer, the person holding the pen, channels this energy that the trees all around us, the trees are all around us.
Yes.
And it just opens us up
in
ways like, we can't imagine.
It's like we're open enough to hear that.
Yeah.
That radio channel, just kind of dial into a different channel and The wisdom is there.
The wisdom is there. The wisdom is there. The second prompt is, imagine you have the strength of an ancient oak tree. How would you put that strength to work right now? And I don't say this lightly, because even when I'm working with groups, I listen to the sounds they make when I share the prompts. They go,
Yeah.
and they sort of like, like, oh, that kind of tickles my fancy a bit. And, when it comes to neuroscience, the brain likes novelty, doesn't it? So, if you just keep, as a coach, if you just keep asking the same old traditional coaching questions that we've been trained to ask, no disrespect, we're going to get the same old answers.
I just got a great idea. I'm going to actually give these prompts to somebody that is in a very challenging situation and they can't seem to get past their, the chaos in their head. So thank you for that.
Well,
Wow.
can I share what I'd like to do for you?
Oh,
I'm going to
yeah.
send you a deck.
Oh, my gosh,
You have all
Jackee.
49.
Oh, my gosh.
That would be a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. They sound like pure magic, because that is what nature
Yeah.
can do for us, is to really bring us into that beautiful magical realm.
And I'm really glad that you used the word magic, because one of the ways I wanted to, or I do work with nature, is bringing nature inside. I wanted a way, each of these resources that I create is a way of bringing nature in, to remind people to go out back into nature. But also I find that these nature prompts and the writing maps are a really good way of people connecting with their own true nature. I hope that doesn't sound too cliche, but I feel like it invites us to connect with the more authentic and real parts of ourselves that we can easily become disconnected from our modern world and our busy lives, and just moving so fast. And I listen to myself. I am somebody who, I love to read. I do a lot of work. I invest a lot of time in my own personal growth, and I'm really supporting others to become better versions of themselves. Whilst holding on to the fact that we are good enough, we are enough. But I think that it's just very easy to fall off the wagon. And I need ways to bring myself back.
Wow. That seems like a beautiful way to end this conversation. But I do want to open it. Are there any last words you would like to share?
I really just would like to invite people to just think about how they can adopt a tree, like notice a tree in their neighborhood that, when they walk past it, they notice what seasons it's in, they notice what's going on in the tree. I feel like when we observe something in nature up close, it invites us to notice ourselves as well. So when you're noticing the season of a tree and what season that tree is in, you can ask yourself the question, what season am I in right now? What is it like being in this season? What do I want, or what do I hope I want to produce or create or generate? And what do I need to let go of? I feel like there's such a way in which nature can be, and trees can be, great teachers to us. But yeah, it's an invitation to really use nature as a companion in your journal writing.
There's so much to say about that. And I do feel such a deep kindred relationship with you, kindred spirit of developing a deeper relationship with nature and trees and helping us remember our authentic selves. And I do hope this podcast does its bit to help people recall also their experiences in nature and also get out there for more, because out in nature we don't have the distortion of the walls and the energy that gets embedded in our structures. We get out there, the wind is blowing, the weather is happening, we're experiencing life, we're immersed in it.
Absolutely. I totally concur and agree. It's been amazing having this conversation with you.
Yeah, I am so glad we got acquainted, and I just look forward to connecting with you further in the future. And thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank you, Maureen.
And I hope if you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, subscribe, and comment, because we will respond to your comments. Please, we'd love to hear what this brought up for you, and if you're inspired to do some exploration with a tree that you encounter, we would love to hear it. So thank you, everybody, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.